Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And well, when it comes to news, CCP did drop one other chaos item in the mix last week. That is of course that they are going to increase the taxes. Now this has not been implemented on TQ yet. Apparently they want to take their time and they're gonna deploy that on CC first to take a look at everything, because it's not just that they're increasing the taxes, but they're also changing the skills that have an influence on the taxes, increasing their efficiency a little bit. But overall we should expect higher taxes, especially in NPC stations, and this will of course have an impact on the economy. Generally speaking, we've had a tax hike before. It just means that things go up in price a little bit because the consumer always ends up paying those taxes. The producers, the people that bring stuff to the market and try to sell it there, tend to just up their price a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see if that already has an impact this week, but I of course do think that we'll see the actual impact only after it's been deployed on the servers. We also had a bit of a problem with the chat system just yesterday, so it looks like it's working right now, but on my main account we're actually trying to play a little bit through all of that. I lost all my chat channels, so I'm gonna have to redo quite a few of those as well. And then we still have the skilling spree that is going on. I'm also getting a lot of the just kill one NPC, get 10,000 skill points. They did say in the article where they announced that they're going to have a sort of a contest to get that kill as quickly as possible. A timed contest where you have to put up a video on Twitter or something like that. This is the one that has the highest chance of dropping. So basically it's not abnormal that you mostly get this mission to do for the skilling spree. Perhaps there's like a little bit of a tweak so that newer accounts get the kill 10 NPCs more often than veteran accounts. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a bad thing. If you want to help out newer players, you gotta give them a leg up somehow. But I'm not sure. That's just a speculation on my part. Of course, it could be that CSP just decides that it's the same for everyone, but that the kill one NPC has like I don't know, 50 or even 60% chance of dropping for people, and the others are so small that statistically you're not unlikely to get 4 or 5 times the same mission. Next up, let's go take a quick look at the new Eden store while a helicopter passes by. We still have the new Sanchez skins, True Deliverance, which is also packed in a bundle for 200 plex for the sub-capital versions of them. And then we get quite a few bundles front and center here. Sisters of Eve bundle, one for mining ships, couple of strategic cruiser skins, but also a bundle for the Triglavian ships, 2 of them actually. So yeah, really cool. Lots of bundles. If you want some skins for a whole ship line, this is the time to go and take a look at the new Eden store for sure. But let's get moving on the market itself. Let's move to some plex and stuff, and that's gonna be at 335. Like that, and that is continuing the decline. I think on the chart it definitely is, landing close to 3.5 million even on a couple of days. That's quite a surprise, but you can see now 1, 2, basically 3 legs down, well away from the 4.5 million as the average price. We also see an increase in volume here, so if I'm not mistaken, we had like another 15% sale on Plex for a while. I think that's going to have its impact here as well. But well, it is summertime as well, so we're getting a double dose, I think, of downward pressure, which means that in Jita prices of Plex are down to 3.8 million for the sellers, almost 3.6 million for the buyers. If we go to the player-owned trade hubs, we are down to less than 3.7 million for the sellers, and the buyers stay around just above 3.5 million. So definitely a lot of pressure. And last week I was saying perhaps, you know, if you consider buying Plex below 4 million as an opportunity, you can slowly start to do so. We're another leg down here. I would say if you want a plex investment, I would definitely start to look into your first purchases at this point, because this is a serious decline in price of almost 1 million ISK on a 4.5 million item. We are definitely getting into that territory. From the volume spike, we can also see that a plex has just a sale has just happened. So this is definitely, relatively speaking, a pretty good time to jump in. Of course, the increased taxes and everything that CCP is doing with the chaos era could mean even more pressure on the price of plex, even on the medium term. At this point, we really don't know what they're planning to do, but if you start to like get rid of asset safety and things like that, really bring in the risk, and I'm not sure what's going to happen at that point. But right now we already have a very nice decline in price. I would say don't decide to put all your ISK into plex right now. Don't make your entire investment. Make sure that you still have some reserves for later purchases. But I do think that buying some plex right now on the longer term is going to be a good investment, because we can easily reach 4 and 4.5 million ISK. We've shown that just a couple of months ago, and inflation is the name of the game. For the people that are worried about the increase in taxes, sure, it is a bigger ISK sink, but in an online economy like this, I really don't see actual deflation as ever being even a medium-term potential strategy. That's a very, very bad sign for the game, and it's never going to be acceptable by any developers, I think, to have that situation happen in the game for any real length of time. People need to be able to build something up, and the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is their wallet. Activities in the game are going to yield a net positive of ISK pretty much no matter what happens. So plex being that hedge against inflation, yeah, it makes sense in my opinion to jump in at least for a little bit at this point already. Next up, the multiple pilot train certificates. So this one is still basically recovering from that sale that drove the price down from 2 billion to 1.5 billion, and we're still around that price range, 1.6 billion for the sellers almost, and less than 1.5 billion for the buyers. My read on this one is that well, it takes a long time for these kinds of volumes on a normal daily trade volumes to get absorbed by the market. So there's definitely a little bit of inertia that needs to be passed through before market forces actually take over, and we see some movement in the multiple pilot trades. Right now there's just too much supply because of that sale that happened. After that, we have the skill extractors, which follow plex very closely, of course. Here atop at 500 million ISK, going back down to almost 400 million ISK on the chart. It's 412 for the sellers and 406 million for the buyers. A very nice decline as well, of course. 500 to 400, almost 1/5 of the price. Not bad. Should you start to buy here? Again, that's all your choice. For me personally, if I would have to make a choice now, I would rather go for some plex and leave the skill extractors for a potential even lower price at this point. If we could get below 400 million ISK, for instance, that would be a place where I would decide that maybe some skill extractors are on the menu. After that, we still have the injectors, of course. How is all of that translating when it comes to our injector prices? Continued pressure here as well. We're now breaking through the 900 million ISK barrier on the chart here. Very interesting, right? From 1 billion top already giving background as well. Now, to mirror the skill extractor decrease, we need to get very close to 800 million ISK, but the pressure is there right now. 885 million for the sellers, 862 for the buyers, still a bit of margin, so we can clearly see that we are still in the process of going down in price. Although the last couple of days we've basically settled at the current range. For the small scale injectors, we see even more clearly that we get a decrease in price, atop at 210 million ISK, and now we are heading for that 180 million ISK price range. 180 in fact now for the sellers in the perimeter trade hubs, 167 for the buyers. Still a decent margin here, so still room for more pressure on the small scale injectors. Of course, the skilling spree where you get free SP is probably gonna do a little bit when it comes to the demand, especially for newer players. And so this might just be really a combination of elements that is putting a lot of pressure in the last month, I would say, when it comes to the injectors. You've got the the sale on the multiple pilot train certificates, that definitely increased the margins for skill point farms. But now you have that free SP that comes into the game, which they might be using as well, but it is, I think, low enough in amounts that's actually taking away customers from the skill point farmers as well, and so we get this continued pressure here with plex prices going down as well. And we still have the daily alpha injector that is also down in price, back below 60 million ISK at this point, basically back where we started earlier in the year. You could actually call this the normal price, 60 million for the sellers and less than 54 million for the buyers. Again, also a decent margin opening up between sellers and buyers. So for some reason, I'm basically seeing a little bit less demand for skill points right now. I think people are having a bit more of a wait and see approach, considering that CCP is really being very generous with them at the moment. Next up, we have the mineral category coming in at 1035. Like that, and you may already have spotted it on the ticker, but titanium in JITA is back up. We've got one small seller at 6.60 ISK, but then it's 690 for the sellers, and then going all the way up 7 and even 720 becomes visible as well. 630 for the buyers, leaving up a little bit of a margin, but we can clearly see that we are well up in price, and it hasn't translated in the charges yet. So I think that we should go up here in the next couple of days as well. If we look outside of JITA, well, one jump out, it's still 654 with some volumes, alright, in the Perimeter Tranquility Tech 2 Refinery and Trading Tower. That is very interesting actually, because that could be, looking at the time stamps for a lot of these, especially the bigger orders, this could already be a preparation for the increased tax hike. If the player-owned trade hubs keep those taxes at a minimum, then the gain, the difference between selling in an NPC station and selling in a player-owned trade hub becomes quite large, and it might even be enough to start to move your trading for even something like titanium, which is like one of the bulkiest items you can find in the game. That could be worth it to start to move your trading towards that Tranquility Trading Tower. Now, as I've said, I'd be careful myself, because moving 250 million units of titanium is not easy, and if the asset safety goes away, then I'm not sure how people are going to go about when it comes to the risk factor in trading in a trade hub. It is going to be very, very interesting, but this is entirely in line with how I would try to handle that. Increase the taxes, make sure that the NPC stations are hit the hardest, try to get people more and more into the structures, give them real tangible benefits for risking a structure, but then increase the risk of those structures as well. So titanium is on the upswing, but it is a bit of trading in the Tranquility Trading Tower that's actually keeping the chart from heading towards that 7 ISK price range, because, well, they have better margins, and they will have even better margins when the tax changes hit the game. For pyrite, it's doing really well as well. Went to 4.5 ISK, tried to go back down to 4.3, but look at that nice little bounce. So right now pyrite is selling for 452, buyers are coming in at 423, so 4.5 ISK for pyrite, highest point of the year, not bad. After that we have Mexalon, a surprising decline for me personally, because you'd think that in nullsec yields would have gone down a little bit when it comes to the blackout, and that you would just hit the Mexalon bottleneck more quickly. That doesn't seem to be the case. We're actually declining close to a 1 year low point. How close to 55 are we? Buyers are at 55, sellers are at 58. So surprise loser for me is Mexalon, that is now trading below average again. Then we have Isogen, that is alright, slowly going up, but just peaking out from the 15 ISK bottom range. So that's not really good. On some increased volumes, I think some people made a bit of an investment. Makes sense with the tax changes, to be honest. You can expect a bit of an increase in price across the board there. Something like Isogen might actually finally form a bottom, and although the increase will be very artificial, it'll just be more expensive to trade in Isogen basically. 1559 for the sellers, 1483 for the buyers. After that we have the Noxium chart that is now risking 300 again, so you can see that we constantly do try to get below that 300 disc mark. It just hasn't really materialized that often. So really strong performance for Noxium, but right now at the tail end we're getting into a risky territory again. 303 is for the sellers, 289 for the buyers, so definitely a bit of pressure. Volume wise, nothing too crazy in my book. We're going up decently quickly back to 307, so I think we'll be able to defend that yet again, but you can see that we are playing very close to the 300 disc mark. If sellers decide to go below that, that could always be rather dangerous for the price. After that we have Zydrine, really flat, just above 500 discs. There's not much to say here. 521 for the sellers, 499 for the buyers. They're trying to grab that as Zydrine below 500 disc, but look at these volumes: 3 million, 2.6, 3.3, another 2, another 2. Yeah, again, that is the big change compared to what it was before Moon Mining opened up Zydrine and Megasite sources in 0.5 systems in high sec. In other words, when you used to have much fewer sell orders, much bigger volumes, and basically a bit of a cartel that could dominate the price by deciding where they're gonna sell at, because you needed to import all of these minerals. That is gone, and people clearly bring in their weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it is, production to the market at this point. Megasite is in the same position, still slowly continuing in this decline away from 450. We might even land at 400 disc on this one. 434 for the sellers, 408 is for the buyers. A slight uptick in the sell price on this one. 3 million, 1.1 million, 2 million, 500,000, 850,000. Again, these are indeed the production volumes, in my opinion, of a nearby 0.5 system refineries. And then finally we have Morphite that actually did really well and is building on a third step up. Okay, last week I was really sure that this was a great time to sell above 10,000 disc, and I was wrong yet again. So you could have bought these for 7,500 disc, and right now Morphite is selling for 12,500 disc, a third jump up. Quite a surprise to me. 11,850 for the buyers. They have been forced up as well. If you have an explanation for this third jump, is that the blackout? Because Morphite, you can't really get that from anywhere outside of Nosik. I think that that's definitely a possibility, but this is quite surprising, right? 1 year low point, a first leg up to 9,000 disc, a second to above 10,000 disc, and now a third one to 1 year high point of 12,500 disc right now. So Morphite, yeah, jumping in 3 segments and going back to a 1 year high point. A great time to sell, of course, if you had the patience for it. Then this is, well, 7,500 to 12,500. That is like probably a 40% increase in price. Very, very nice trade, of course, for especially 1 to 3 months time. That is not bad at all. So Morphite, really interesting, and I didn't think it was gonna happen. Things were so stable for so long, but turns out I was completely wrong. You can clearly see now this is the sandbox economy, and things can turn around basically at the drop of a hat very, very quickly. Next up we have the PI segment coming in at 18 minutes. It's exactly the same as last time. Let's take a look at this one. Here we get a broadcast notes that earlier in July went to 1 year low point, less than 1.7 million ISK here as the very bottom price. We basically recovered back to an average 2 million on the chart, 2.1 million for the sellers, a bit below 2 million for the buyers. We're back at that slightly below average price, which is slowly becoming the average price for the broadcast notes. So I personally would be looking for real buy opportunities in DPI material. I do think that the summer tends to have that pattern that producers of PI tend to keep playing the game. Consumers of PI tend to drop off a little bit during the summer. So let's see if we can find any of those. Next up we have the construction blocks, back up towards 11,000 disc, back on its average here as well. In fact, 11,200 for the sellers is an okay price, and this is a surprisingly low margin, 10,800 for the buyer. So decently strong demand, good supply. Construction blocks feels quite okay. Consumer electronics went back to 13,000 disc as well. In fact, it broke out to 14,000 disc on a day. Back down a little bit here, probably on more supply. The question is, where are the buyers at? 12,000 disc for the buyers, 13,000 for the sellers. This is actually a normal situation for consumer electronics as well. Then we've got coolants, that's actually going up in price, back to 12,500 is currently trading above average. Fuel related, of course, it's a bit different, 12,400 for the sellers, 11,700 for the buyers. Great price for coolants and very nice little comeback yet again. Enriched uranium, what's that one doing? Also coming back, 15,000 ISK now. That is definitely not bad. 15 for the sellers, 13,700 for the buyers, trading well above average. So this one is looking really good as well. You're getting lots of ISK for your production there. Then we get the integrity response drones. All right, a bit of a surprise here again. You can see that these have had a rough couple of months here, with 2.25 million being the bottom of the chart and playing with that couple of times, keeping under pressure, but now here at the tail end again, decent recovery. We're well away from the 2.5 million, 2.6 for the sellers, 2.4 for the buyers. This is a normal average price again for integrity response drones. I am very surprised by this so far. Even the mechanical parts, which last week dropped off to less than 11,000 ISK, are back up, 11,500 for the sellers, 10,600 for the buyers, back to, well, practically an average price for the year here as well. We're not finding any great opportunities. Nuclear reactors had one volume spike which drove the price up to less than 100,000 ISK, so this is way too stable in my opinion as well. 95,500 for the sellers, 86,000 for the buyers. That is pretty low, but that remains, in my opinion, a pretty long-term gamble, because we have been in this weird situation for nuclear reactors for most of the year at this point, where buyers are well below everything. Organic mortar applicators, same story, except here we have a May bottom where we went to less than a million ISK, basically recovered pretty quickly from that, and we're now actually staying above average. 1.2 million for the sellers, 1.1 million for the buyers. Actually slightly expensive organic mortar applicators. I am also seeing volume increases here as well. Let's see if that's across the board for volume increase here as well. Broadcast nodes, volume increase here as well. Okay, maybe I missed something, but this does look like some more active trading. Some people really starting to invest in those advanced PI materials. Who knows? They may have sniffed out some information that I have missed about an upcoming structure. That almost starts to look like it. Next up we have the robotics, the first one that is really declining here from 110,000 in July, finally showing some pressure down to 95,000. Sellers are below 100,000 ISK, buyers are at 93,000 ISK here. With a bit more pressure, this does start to look very interesting. The closer buyers get to 90,000 ISK, the more likely it is that you can get a nice profit out of this one. Keep one thing in mind, this is actually not super volatile between 110,000 and 95,000 on this chart. It's not that great for trading, but here at the tail end, you can clearly see a decently sharp drop off. If that has any momentum and we can drive these buyers down even more, then that would be great. Although you can clearly see as well that there's quite a bit of work to do on that one. After that, we've got a self-harmonizing power cores. Here we even have a March bottom of 1.9 million. We played with that a couple of times again, never really reached it, but you can clearly see now that we are in the recovery phase. 2.1 million for the sellers, less than 2 million for the buyers. Okay, no, that's not actually that great. Should be 1.9 million for an actual opportunity. And then we have the superconductors, which last week did drop off to close to 10,000 ISK. That's where you could have probably made a decent deal if you bought at the right time, but that's already recovering as well. 12,500 in fact for the sellers, 11,500 for the buyers. That's right back on its average normal price. And then we have the test cultures, the one that have been struggling the most, which kind of reminds me of Morphite here. You look at that decline over the last 8 months or so, never really getting back above 7,000 ISK. 7,700 for the sellers, but 6,000 ISK for the buyers. To be honest, if you want to have a purchase in PI this week, invest in some cheap test cultures, put up a buyer 6.1, 6.2, something like that. You're gonna probably be able to grab that, and it's a bit of a gamble, but it's like that Morphite gamble. Who is going to buy here at less than 7,500 ISK, looking at that super slow decline over months and months and months? Then that's an increase. Is this a trade? No, that's not really a trade. We decline here again. I was really hesitant to actually make those purchases, but I was wrong. Look at that, 3 months later, 40% profit. There is chance I would say if you look at this test culture chart and you look at people buying at 6,000 disk, that we are in that same situation as well. And then finally we have the wetware mainframes, which just last week dropped off to 2 million disk. Again, a clear increased volume on this one. 2.2 million for the sellers, 2.1 million for the buyers. Bit of surprise, but PI across the board is actually in recovery and holding on to average normal prices. Really the only one that is not doing so here is test cultures, because those buyers are just not non-existent. Next up, advanced moon materials, coming in at 25 minutes, let's say. Which again is the same as last week. All right, getting into the habit. Crystalline carbonites. So here, I think with the deployment of the Imperium, was it like around June or so, we did start to see an increase in prices for a decent amount of these advanced materials, basically a recovery back to an average price for the year. And now I think with the blackout and after the blackout as well, things will have stabilized a little bit, and now we are back on the decline, unfortunately. Crystalline carbonite still away from the bottoms, but back to a less than average 145 for the sellers, 140 for the buyers. Ferrite carbide is holding on to 150, so that one is actually doing all right. 154 for the sellers, 147 for the buyers. Really narrow margin and at a decent average price. Then we have the titanium carbide, which had a June spike with the deployment. I think that basically that region, that part of space that produces this titanium carbide the most, was hit the hardest by the deployment, and as a result we had this lovely spike. But we're holding on to 200 disk almost. It's 195 for the sellers, 190 for the buyers. Again, narrow margin here and doing okay on the price. And then we have tungsten carbide that also had a bit of a spike, but here the decline does start to bring it back to a less than average price as well, just like with the crystalline carbonites here. 191 for the sellers, 189 for the buyers. That's a super narrow margin, but we are already well below the 200 disk price range. After that are metamaterials. Photonic metamaterials are again trying to hold on, but you can clearly see that we get a bit of pressure. We're down to less than 17,500 on the average price, 17,000 for the buyers. Then we have plasmonic metamaterials. That's doing okay, especially on this 1 year chart. That's actually staying quite strong. Bit of a lack of supply, 23,000 for the sellers here. Buyers almost at that point. Plasmonic metamaterials definitely trading above average for the year, so this could be one that, if you happen to have them, is a good time to sell. Then we have the nonlinear metamaterials. Here we can see the decline again, 3 steps up to more than 30,000 disk, but here at the tail end, clearly things have stabilized, down to 27,000 for the sellers, 25,000 for the buyers. Still an average okay price, maybe even a touch above average, but you can see that the pressure is back on here. And then we have the terahertz metamaterials that actually jumped to a 1 year high point of 27,500, declining to 25,000. Still a bit of a lack of supply here as well, so managing to trade above average. Alright, well, doing okay, but I think generally you can see in the last week or so that there is a bit of pressure. What are the other materials doing? Fermionic condensates, lovely spike to 110,000 disk, but here is that pressure. Obviously, we're back below average. 92,000 for the sellers, 88,000 for the buyers. Really sharp decline. That is a nice trade to make. Less than 90k, sell for 110, but look at that pressure. Yeah, it was not to last. Ferrogel, same pressure to be seen here after breaking out to an above average price. We're back close to average. 49,000 for the sellers, 47,000 for the buyers, 50k. Yeah, getting back towards the average. Fullerides, bit of a spike as well. Not much to say, hovering still below 1,000 disk, and you can even see at the tail end here that there's even more pressure on the price. We're selling now for 934, well down from 1,000 disk. Hypersynaptic fibers, also a bit of a spike, but back to a less than average price, 12k. Indeed, nano transistors next, first one to continue climbing. How far above 5,800, a bit starting to come in. That's going to curtail that increase in price. So basically a lack of supply in nano transistors means that you still have a great price to try to sell at right now, but that's probably not gonna last too long. Phenolic composites next are coming in at slightly increased price, but where do we come from? Unfortunately, a really bad spot. So we're only now trying to eke out a path towards an average price, 2,300 for the sellers, 2,150 for the buyers. Basically still working our way away from the bottom prices here. And then finally the ceramic fibers are holding on, but again at the tail end, bit of pressure here, getting back below 500 disc, 496 now for the sellers. So bit of pressure in general in the advanced materials. There are some exceptions to that rule this week as well. Let's see what the Tech 2 ships are doing next, coming in at 29.50. Here, well, with that pressure on the advanced materials, I would look for opportunities. I think Aries very flat above 25 million, 26.5 for the sellers to 27, in fact, 24 million for the buyers. Yeah, I think we can do better, to be honest, if we look at this drop off. Basilisk, that one overshot a little bit, so this one is that typical pattern. And actually, if you look at this Basilisk chart, this is not bad for trading. 300 million, a bottom at 230, back up to 300, back down to 200, up 300, down 200. I mean, that's where you'd love to trade. Then a bit of stability here, but June we have that deployment up to 280, and then here we had another decline close to 200 million ISK here, so a bit of an overshoot by the suppliers. We're now back on a normal average price on the chart, 250 for the sellers, 220 for the buyers, so that's not where you want to make your move. But I do think that this Basilisk chart exemplifies a Tech 2 chart that we love, where you have lots of trade opportunities over the course of 1 year. 1, 2, 3, 4 clear sell opportunities, 1, 2 really clear buy opportunities, and even here at 230 you could make 5 of those if you want to. So just 2-3 weeks ago, right here, 210 million, you could have bought a couple of Basilisk, and looking at this chart, that would have been a very good purchase. That's what we're basically mostly looking for at the moment, although I've said my eye has mostly been on PI, and unfortunately that has not materialized. Cerberus basically back to a slightly above average price on this one, 274 for the sellers, 250 for the buyers. Basically looking like it is decently popular at the moment. Next up, we've got the Crow, really sharp decline after its June performance, getting down to well below 30 million all of a sudden, but 25 million I think is the bottom that we want to look for. 24 million for the buyers. Let's take a look. Yep, even outside of Jita. So that is, I mean, 24 million. Let's see if I can make that happen. Here it is. That is the bottom price for the Crow. So basically a bit of an overshoot here as well on that spike, and right now you are buying for 1 year low prices if you grab them close to 24 million. This one is definitely something, just buying 24.1, something like that. If you grab one, you're gonna have a good deal whenever we get another deployment. Not as good a chart, I would say, as the Basilisk chart, but still here you can clearly see that 35 million and more is possible from time to time, so not bad. The Guardian also not bad, couple of very clear spikes here, and then these bottoms at 200 million are quite clear as well. Unfortunately, we're basically on the recovery path here, 250 for the sellers, 221 for the buyers. So that's just the in-between space. That's not too interesting. The Heretic, another leg up for an interdictor. Bit of surprise considering that it's been so low for so long, staying at around 70 or even less for quite a while. He's now trading for 87 million. Buyers are still at 73 though, so it does look like it's a bit of a lack of supply that is creating this increased price here. Volume wise, yeah, some spikes, but nothing completely out of the ordinary. The averages don't look that bad. The Hound is climbing up back above 30 million ISK here, 33 million for the sellers, 29 million for the buyers. But here again, you can clearly see 40 million at the tops, 25 million at the bottoms. That's very nice trading chart with 4 opportunities over the last year as well. Then the Ishtar has been a really weird story, of course. Continued decline over like 6 months or so, down to a 1 year low point of 190 million. And now look at the second leg up here, currently trading for 255 million for the sellers, 219 for the buyers. This is, I think, the Vexor Navy issue shining through, right? That nerf really, put that playstyle, that passive 5 large drone playstyle, or that drone playstyle, you could even say, away from the Vexor Navy issue to, well, you get the Ishtar, you get a Myrmidon. not even that good, I think, as Vexor Navy issue potentially. And then you've got the Dominics that of course did become are basically replacements for that Vexor Navy issue. But the Ishtar is part of that, and so this one can now command close to 1 year high point. A couple of days ago, unfortunately, we're already back on the decline towards 250. Still, not a bad price for the Ishtar. Then we've got the Manticore, that's also pretty nice here. Bottom less than 30 million ISK, top at 40 million. Couple of trades to be made here. Right now we're back on the decline, so where are the buyers? 28 million for the buyers, 35 million for the sellers. Here again, yeah, just like with the Crow, 28 million is pretty damn low. That is another possibility. If you want to be ready for the next price spike on the Manticore, this could be the right time to buy. Then we get to Munin, slowly up to 280 million, now selling for 270, 263. Why is it 280 on the chart? Couldn't tell you. That is actually kind of a weird one. Or is all of this? Yeah, it's in the last 24 hours that they brought the price back down from 280 to 270. So we get some selling. Basically, we're back above average, and someone is bringing in the goods to drive that price back down. Then we've got the Nemesis. That is a very late spike with the June deployment, but we did go up to 38 million ISK, coming from 25 million. Look at that volatility. That is so awesome. Unfortunately, right now it's 31 million for the sellers, 29.5 million for the buyers. So that's not really the time to make your move anymore. But just look at that potential right here. The Oneros is, I think, like the most stable and the lowest volume logistics cruiser, so this one is not too interesting, except that sometimes you can of course gauge trends on it. If it is really oversupplied and you start to see this price go well below 180 million on the chart, then take a look at some of the other ones. So let's say here late May and look at the Basilisk. Well, we're just coming from that opportunity right here. And then for the Guardian also, look at that, definitely 1 year low point, less than 200 million ISK. That is why the Oneros can be interesting, because it doesn't have those spikes as much, but it does clearly show you when everything is completely oversupplied across the board. Because of its low volumes, that is when that becomes really recognizable. Then you've got the Purifier, and this I think is gotta be one of the best charts, with bottoms close to 25, well 26, 27 million most of the time I would say, but then 40 million back down. So you could have bought here 40 million back down, 40 here again, and here right at the tail end. In fact, we went down to 30 million ISK. We're already working our way back up to 34 million ISK. Buyers at 30. Unfortunately here we do see decreased volatility a little bit, but look at that potential here with those sell opportunities. That's a really good chart. I'm really happy actually to see this back, because when CCP first introduced moon mining, and then we had a real big, was it increase? Yeah, I think increase in price for the Tech 2 ships, and it just sucked all the volatility out of that market. And now we have finally recovered. All production cycles are up and running. We get more supply sources, and so we've basically recovered mostly. I think we're still buying a premium from before all of those changes, but that volatility is back, and that is so important for traders. It's really great to see. After that, we get the Saber. Try to get up to 70 million ISK, just doesn't succeed. I think we'll see fresh supply. Yeah, look at that. Full front page in the last 24 hours, practically driving the price back down to 65 million ISK, and it's a complete lack of demand for the Saber. If you want that longer term gamble, then try to grab some Sabers well below 65 million ISK at this point, and yeah, 1 year low point, and then be patient of course, because couldn't tell you what needs to be done for the Saber to find its way back into the meta and into higher prices. Then we've got the Scimitar with a very late spike as well, up to 300 million ISK here. This one also not too volatile, but actually does move on big deployments, or tends to move on big deployments, down to 225 for the sellers, 216 for the buyers. Let's see, 216. Yeah, not yet at bottom prices, but really nice sell opportunity, like maybe 10 days ago. And then we get a Stiletto that's flat in the in-between place as well. Only one real spike here, but from 26 million up to 40 million ISK. That's definitely a trade that if we grabbed it would have made us quite a bit of ISK. So the Tech 2 market is very much alive, but it does always take like a little bit of a risk to decide, all right, well, you know what, I am actually gonna buy these Sabers now that we're trading everything below 65 million ISK. That's below the entire chart, but you don't always know when you're gonna get that result. But when the volatility does exist, man, can you make some nice trades here. After that, our Tech Tree ships, 39.15. Like that, let's start as always with the destroyers. The confessor is flat below 40 million ISK, not much to say here. 39 million for the sellers, 35 million for the buyers. Fresh supply dropped off a little bit. I think that's normal, if I'm not mistaken. We had some above 40 million here, and volume wise this is quite normal, quite doable, I would say, for the market. Maybe even slightly on the lighter side of things. Perhaps the price will start to go back up. We'll have to see what the others have been doing. Here is the Hecate, surprise jump to 50 million ISK, but already recovering back down to 48 million for the sellers, 41 million for the buyers. And here you can see that that's where supply is moving, but the volumes are not crazy at all. So I would say that this gives room for the confessor to dry up a little bit more. We'll see more Hecates come in, driving the price back to, well, above 40 million. I think for the confessor is definitely possible. Then we've got the Jackdaw, flat below 40 million. Supply here is going to be really important. 40 million for the sellers, 37 million for the buyers. Fresh supply, nothing. That's actually really important. And then we're basically now, you can see that we overdid it a little bit, probably on this spike up to 55 million ISK, but now the market has time to absorb all of that. So we're nice at 40 million ISK. If this stays and we get the Hecate basically really grabbing all the attention, grabbing a lot of the production, then the Jackdaw will have time to chew through these 50s here and work its way back above 40 million as well. That's when the healthy market forces are ready to take back over. So this really still looks like very nice markets. Even this Vapel manages to jump up above 40 million ISK, 42 for the sellers, 38 for the buyers, and as a result, you know, half a page of new supply here as well, taking advantage of that. The Jackdaw very stable for like a full month, below 40 million ISK, and the result, as you would expect, fresh supply has dried up in this one, and now it is basically surviving and keeping that price low on the previous volumes that have been brought, which was an overreaction on the Imperium deployment spike up to 60 million. This is really nice. This is, in my opinion, textbook of a well-supplied market, really healthy market that moves where demand goes, that takes advantage of better prices, that is able to cool down on lower prices, and thus you have this lovely interaction here. Very good stuff. The cruiser market is a bit different, and the Legion breaking out to 190 million ISK, and this was a little bit what I was afraid of. To my surprise, these bottom prices here in May and in July were on really low availability, almost no volumes of sell orders on the market, so that felt really crazy. And so just a bit of buying, not even that many ships. You can see volume wise here, nothing crazy, not even above 100 a day, but it did drive the price up from 140 million ISK to almost 200 million ISK, and now the availability is just basically gone. And so this was the danger, also the opportunity, granted, in these Tech Tree cruiser markets, that this would happen, and it happened right here in the Legion, as I was expecting. Let's see if the Loki has followed suit. No, that one is still not moving anywhere, but it is of course the most popular one. So already at like 190 million ISK for the sellers, 173, and you can see here the supply that did move in for the Loki. We've got decent availability here all of a sudden. For the Loki, that is probably what's gonna keep this one in check. But yeah, the Legion just jumped up to the same price range as the Loki all of a sudden, and not on like massive volumes or a change or anything like that. The Proteus next, same May bottom at 130. Availability was quite terrible. We worked our way up to 175 or something like that. Right now it's 169 for the sellers, 150 for the buyers, and availability is still really bad. So this one is primed to basically go jump up as well. Unfortunately for the Proteus, it is the least popular one, and I showcased that it's not that great a ship. I'm not that great a pilot either, but it's definitely not the best Tech Tree cruiser out there, and so this one may just not have the popularity to make that jump like what the Legion did. But it is primed to do so. You don't need that big of a purchase to all of a sudden find yourself in the 190 million territory. So that's the danger with the Tech 3 cruiser market, just that the availability can really drop off. Then we get Tengu that's holding on at 180 million, 175 for the sellers, 163 for the buyers. Here we get a bit more of a normal market, more supply. Some fresh orders coming in here as well, so the Tengu is a bit trickier to do that same move as what we saw with the Legion, but the Legion was primed for that and it happened right here. So this one, the Tech 3 cruiser market can be manipulated with relatively little ISK, and that is a bit of a problem. In my opinion, it makes it, it gives opportunities, it also makes it very risky to actually invest in that part of the Tech 3 market. So yeah, surprise spike here for the Legion from 140 to 190 million ISK. If you did buy on these, great, that's you're gonna get a nice profit, but its availability was so low that I'm not sure if you really managed to buy that many Legions. Well, just one or two, of course, still makes for a very good trade. And then the destroyer market, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing here. That feels like a really good and healthy market. And then we're gonna move to the extra product this week, and a request from like 2 weeks ago, in fact, to take a look at some of the compact modules. So let's go do that at 45.30. Like that. And so these are Tech 1 modules, but they do tend to be compact. Let's go. They do tend to be decently popular, of course, because the compact part means that they don't need a lot of power grid and CPU for their fittings. Now we're gonna, I think, just gonna try and find some that I know that could be decently popular, like a 100 mAh afterburner. Very flat, slight increase in price up to above 100,000 ISK, but this is really cheap. I'm not seeing anything special here. 10 mAh compact afterburner did come from a period where it was 4 times more expensive than it is now, so we do have some volatility in the cruiser version of the compact afterburner. Then let's take a quick look at the 1 mAh. That one is actually up in price as well. Look at that. It used to be worth absolutely nothing, up to 25k, and is now currently selling for 187,000 ISK. Man, that is quite high. Let's see if we've got better around us. 115 perimeter, so not really that much. Okay. Anything changed in the drops or something like that? This is a weird one. 1 mAh compact afterburner. Just 6 months ago, 14,000 ISK, now 140,000 ISK. So that's kind of crazy. That is indeed a weird one. Don't really have an explanation for that. I think, don't we have compacts? Let's see what else we can find here that I know I tend to use as well when I'm just looking to put something small that doesn't need, well, the prop mods definitely are up there. Let's take a quick look at the tungsten. Yeah, that's just volume wise, there is some trading, but 1600mm rolled tungsten, a bit of volatility at the end here, but generally not moving that much. 2500mm rolled tungsten, yeah, not really. So then we'll take a look at the micro up drive. So here's the 500 mAh one, slightly up in price as well. What's it trading for on the seller side? 400,000 ISK. Okay, then we get the 50 mAh for the cruisers. That is definitely up as well from 6 months ago. Look at that, going for 360,000 ISK, now worth 1.3 million for the 5 mAh compact micro warp drive. That's very interesting. Right here, last 6 months, all of a sudden double the price from before. And this is the 5 mAh. Ooh, did I click something wrong? And then here we get the 50 mAh. So this was actually frigate micro up drive, just like with the frigate afterburner, compact afterburner, definitely massively up in price. And the 50 mAh here, we get an uptick, but it is not completely out of line. Interesting. We could take a quick look at the Arbalest. Ooh, what the hell is that here? Right at the end. This is at less than a million, and now, well, trading for a million. I think some new supply is gonna fix that. That's like a bit too big and not enough volumes to show anything. So alright, not really interested in the capital stuff. What else have we got that could be interesting? Warp disruptors. Nosferatus. Energy neutralizers. I'm not seeing too much there. The prop mods definitely interesting on the frigate ones. The rest of it, I'm not too... Power diagnostic systems. Yeah, they're just not being traded that often. Whereas a prop mod, of course, makes a lot of sense to go the compact route. And is that all there is? There's nothing like a compact armor rep or something like that. Let me take a quick look at that. Where are they? Ships and modules. Then we need equipment, hull and armor reps. Let's do the medium ones. And we have, oh no, you don't have compact, but you do have another version of that as well. Polarized, carapace, anything that jumps out? No. So I think we're actually gonna leave it at that. But for the compact ones, well, we are going to quickly... God damn it, now I can't even type anymore. Compact. We are going to showcase what does make this one interesting. Look at that 1MN YS8 compact afterburner, normally going for next to nothing, 13,000 disk, now selling for almost 200,000 disk. That is kind of a crazy situation. And you've got the same thing with the 5MN micro warp drive that is now trading at a range of above 1 million disk, when normally it costs less than 500,000, you know, through like the first half of the year. Or about 6 months ago. So that is interesting that this popularity seems to have shot up. Or is this a difference in the loot tables? That would not have been on my radar if that was announced and I missed it. Definitely put that in the comments. But these two basically also do increase your exploration for doing stuff like small refuges, anomalies that you find, things like that. That's a very nice increase in price. That's quite noticeable. Anyways, that's gonna end Eve Talk for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.